Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Happy New Year. It is our first Talk to Me Tuesday of 2024, and we are excited to be here with you today. We're back, and we will be here every last Tuesday of the month with some exciting and trending HR topics that we would like to dive into and discuss the way we love to do. So we hope that you enjoy, that you'll engage, and continue on this journey with us. So, again, my name is Simone, the senior HR consulting at Miss Consulting Group here in Metro Atlanta, Georgia. And I have Miss Chantrice here with me. I'll allow her to introduce herself to you before we dive into the topic.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Happy New Year. As Simone was saying, we are so glad to have you back with us this year and hope you find this information that we share with you very fruitful and that you can carry it within, throughout your career as well. So I am Chantrice. I am the CEO and founder of Think Sharp LLC, and I am based out of Oklahoma City. Excited to be here with you guys again.
Absolutely. So, Chantrice, let's dive into what we're doing today with employee development and training, specifically in the upskilling and reskilling of the workplace. I want us to kind of give you guys a little bit of insight on this topic before we dive into our.
Absolutely. So I just want to start off with the introduction being what is upskilling and reskilling in the workplace and what that looks like. And we'll be covering, obviously some advantages and how your organization can also apply some of these skills that we'll be covering today as well. So upskilling is about expanding an employee's existing skill set, while reskilling is more about learning new skills in order to switch roles or career paths. And these concepts are becoming more increasingly important in the modern workplace. And we actually, I believe, have a poll question that we wanted to put out there too, just to gauge and see what everybody's thoughts were about upskilling and reskilling in the workplace.
I agree. Let's dive into the first question. Okay, so the assessment of current skill gap. Do you believe that your current skill set aligns with the future needs of your industry? Your options are yes, I'm fully prepared for the future. Two, somewhat, but I need further development. Or three, no, I need substantial upskilling and reskilling. Um, you can use the chat to submit your response, and we will take the most common used comment and dive into that and maybe some of the other ones. So we'll give you a few seconds. Okay. So on average, somewhat, but I need further development. And I think that with today's society and where we are with the way jobs are, the employment pool, that this is a good one. Yes, most people, if you've been in your industry, you do have the basics, or even maybe a few steps above that to be in your position. But as your organization is growing, reorganizing, and developing, do you have the next set of skills that it's going to take in order for you to grow with your company? And I mean, I think understanding what that looks like. Am I in a position where I need to upskill when just growing more in my industry because I'm going to maintain this role, or I'm looking for a role similar to where I am? Or am I a person that needs to identify that no, I need to reskill? My company is changing paths. I want to remain with them, but I need to add a little more texture to my resume when it comes to the things that I am capable of doing. We do capability statements in other industries, but to a certain extent, as an employee, you kind of need to have that same thought process about yourself. Yes, you're strong here, but what other capabilities do you have when it comes to you and your workplace and in the industry that you're in? So I do think most people are in that same space where I'm good, but I know I want some further development. What do you think, Chantrice?
Yeah, and I agree with everything you just said. And just looking at it from an organization or company standpoint, it's what are you doing to provide these opportunities so that your employees feel like they are able to expand on their skill set or, learn something different that will impact or at least, help you go towards the goals that you're trying to reach. So, you have to look internally too, with like from the organization standpoint, just outside of just the employee also assessing their own skill set. From an organizational point of view, where are your gaps? Where do you see yourself within the next few years, and how are you going to get there with the people you already have, or are you also looking to add on additional talent depending on what the needs are?
I agree. I think, as we prepare to dive into the next talking point, the assessment has to be done on both sides because there is a gap. We see that. We see that with the way there are so many jobs available, but there are still so many people that are consistently looking and they're not being filled.
Yep.
We, recently read an article where you still have 54% of jobs going unfilled. In a calendar year. So there is a gap somewhere, and it is either the employee or candidate has not upskilled or reskilled themselves, or B, the company isn't applying the necessary efforts internally to upskill or reskill the staff that they have. And then I know we'll dive into it a little bit later on how creative these job descriptions have gotten now.
Yeah.
Um, and the job titles where I think it's a lot of just mismatch. And again, there is a gap that needs to have more light shed on it so that we can eliminate the gray area and get people in the roles that they're qualified to be in, and or identify what needs to happen internally, like you said, from an employer perspective, to reskill solid staff that you have been employing. So that kind of dives into our second topic, but I want to put our next poll question up before we get there. So the perception of employers' role. How would you rate your employer's investment in employee development and training? One would be excellent. They invest significantly in upskilling and reskilling. Two would be good. They provide some opportunities for growth. Three would be fair. They could do more to support development. And four would be poor. They provide little to no opportunities for progression.
Mm.
Um, I'm gonna start on this, but Chartreuse, I do want you to come back me up on here because um as people are leaving their comments. I definitely think depending on where you work, most people are going to fall in the 3 to 4 range, honestly,
Yeah, I agree.
because a lot of companies have not, they want to be the beneficiary of this topic, but are they applying the necessary investment to get there? And that is in the event that you are looking to utilize the staff that you have and you are upscaling and reskilling for them, versus just dropping the job description out there and saying that I'm hiring for this position. And that sometimes does happen. So, we know Google used to be that place where they had everything you wanted to work there, prior to their massive layoffs and things of that nature. But they spent so much energy on culture, putting you in the role you should be in, understanding what you need for continuous education. And a lot of companies have not adapted that process, even though we saw how well it worked for them and how well it worked for retention. I do think
Absolutely.
topic does impact retention a lot, because if I'm in a place where I want to grow as an individual, but my company doesn't provide any of that, then what am I doing? I feel stuck. You're providing a space of stagnant, and most people are not comfortable there. Or you have some that are okay, that would like to stay in their role, do this one thing. I'm really good at it, and I don't want to change that. Um,
Those
and
two.
that does work. So it depends on what level the company is willing to invest and how much time they're willing to spend when it comes to sourcing that type of talent. Can I source it within and provide some continued education, or am I scrapping that and I'm going out and I'm sourcing? What do you think?
I completely agree with everything you've been saying. And actually, according to recent research, they were saying that 20% of organizations right now are even using um, different type of software to even track skills management. So that means there's so much opportunity there, and employees are asking for it. Especially if you're an organization that is always promoting continuous education and learning and development and all these opportunities. And as soon as someone gets in the door, you're falling short of that. It's nothing there. So the orientation part of it, the introduction to a company is vital to employees' growth within your organization if you want them
Right,
to stay there. because if you're talking about all these things, you're making it sound wonderful,
So
and then all of a sudden you drop the ball once they get in, then of course they're going to be looking elsewhere. But I
right.
don't think it's too late. I mean, I just like we said before, it takes, some assessment in determining if this is even the right path for you. But I think you should always foster a culture of continuous learning. You should always do that, especially in the landscape we're in right now with, this ever changing technology and all these different tools coming out. We were talking about that, all these different software systems you can use for so many different tasks. And it's just, yeah, it's a lot. So you need to be making sure you're investing in your people for sure.
I agree, and I think we had a comment that I definitely want to kind of dive into a little bit because some companies have um, provided these options on the back end. You brought it up. It was brought up maybe by your strategic HR business partner. It's been identified. The work has been done, but who knows? Who knows that I can log into my ADP and that there is a professional development section, or there are these trainings that I can continue to go to that are industry specific to my role. How is this being communicated? Yes, whoever did my orientation may have brought it up, but I've been here 7 months now, and my workload has piled on. No one else has brought it back up to me. This ties into company culture because if you're have the opportunity is there, but they don't know what are they supposed to do. And I know, sitting in HR roles, our plates get full and get busy. But I think this is one thing that doesn't just fall in the Department of HR. It has to happen on every level.
Oh yeah.
Yes, management needs to see their subordinates. Okay, I have a manager that needs some additional training. I have overheard a conversation with a manager and a staff member. I need to upskill this manager because they are not handling these situations correctly. And or reports that come across my desk and I see errors that should not be here. Let's have a conversation. There may be a class or two. Now, some things we know prerequisites and I should not have to. But sometimes it's nothing wrong with refresher. There's nothing wrong with refresher training.
Yeah.
Um, because sometimes people get very stuck in the consistency and the repetitiveness of their role that some things kind of fall between the gap. But let's dive into our next poll question as it transitions us over to our next talking point. Barriers to learning. What do you feel is the biggest barrier to pursuing upskilling or reskilling in your current role? Could it be your lack of time due to work and personal commitments, insufficient support or resources from your employer, uncertainty about which skills to develop, or the lack of motivation or interest in further training? I love all of these.
They're all great points.
They're all great points. You could
Mhm.
have more than one of these. Um, because sometimes any of these can be taking place simultaneously, like lack of time and personal commitments.
That's it. I figured that was going to be
The
number
top
one.
That's at the top of mine. And
Nobody has time anymore. Nobody.
nobody has
There's
time.
got so much on your plate.
Absolutely. So I definitely think that that is a great one and one that could possibly be at the top of list. And then I think the other one that's going to come in heavy is insufficient support. Yep, somebody just dropped that in the comments, and that is just like we were just touching base that my company isn't applying effort or funding in this area. So I don't have the support I need to upscale myself or reskill myself. And then that kind of dials you back into what your personal workload and personal life looks. Cause I mean, being in my position or this career field for years, I have had to take it upon myself to pay those
Mhm.
few $100s for some classes because I wanted to learn that skill. I saw it in whatever newsletter or whatever webinar was going to take place, and I wanted to add that capability, to my resume or in my repertoire of something that I'm capable of doing. But it may not have been a concern for my employer at the time. They may
Yeah.
not have thought, oh, let me introduce you to this area of HR because that's not what you're doing here. So I only want you to stay focused on this. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of been my experience. What type of experiences on both sides have you had, Chantrice?
I would say it's been more so a lack of time. I feel like the employers that I've worked for in the past, they've always had the resources and they've always shared them as this, here's this employee development training, or here's this, platform that you can use to, learn all these different new skill sets. But then you keep piling the work on. So when am I going to have time to do these additional trainings? I'm not getting paid any additional money. I'm not doing this after I, go home, unless
Mhm.
I really want to invest in myself and put that time in, which I've done recently. But in my, managerial roles working for corporate, there just wasn't time. There
This was
wasn't time. The
I love
resources were
that.
there, but there was no time.
I love the points you just said, because I get that pushback, have sitting in a management conversation, management is expecting, I want them to do it. And then the first question that always comes up is, am I going to be paid extra for doing it?
Exactly.
Because I can't do it during my regular work hours. So
Yeah,
how am I going to be compensated for this? So it can be a catch 22 where you have an
yeah,
employer that is providing the resource, but because the workload is so heavy that you can't get it done during your normal working hours. But for some
absolutely.
employees, if this you want me to upskill, I'm cool where I'm at.
That's
But
true.
I upskill if you're gonna pay me. Am I gonna be able to clock in for this? So I do think that there are different levels and layers to this, especially when it comes to if the employer is investing, but the employee is not ready to make that move. Then you have
Absolutely.
those employees that want those opportunities, but the employer is not investing into that. They rather post the creative job description. And I know we say that for example, in our industry, um, people operations manager or specialist is a new term for HR. What did I say? I saw culture
Employee experience specialist.
specialist, culture engagement coordinator.
They getting creative. They real
So
creative with these titles.
the titles for
These are
positions, not
new jobs.
our industry, but in other industries are changing so much, and the job descriptions are changing. The wording is even more so colorful and creative there, to whereas am I skilled enough for this position? Because
Yeah,
this isn't my traditional role. Or they've cut and cookie cut out so many different things to where I only want one person that is capable of this and has the experience in this, and the skill set in this. I don't care that you've done all these other things in this particular lane. This is what matters. And sometimes, again, going back to, you have to upskill yourself or reskill yourself, because if you're looking, especially if you're looking for a career change or industry change, your employer may not provide you with the resources you need to do that. So going into and this kind of addresses the skills gap and illuminating how there are so many different platforms and softwares out there that can help you, whether you're trying to do it independently or if you are in a work environment. Sometimes people go overboard. I mean, we read about companies having 2.7 to 3 different platforms that they're piling onto their staff that they
yeah,
want them to integrate into their daily routines. I know some companies that are using like 5 or 6 different things. And it's like, that's too much. I know AI is integrated into a lot of different things that can help, but when you give your full workload to your staff on top of 7 platforms that I would like for you to log into and complete this and do that, you're losing them
yeah.
somewhere. It's not going to get done. But let's dive into that poll question first before I go on a tangent. Methods of learning. Which mode of learning do you prefer for upskilling or reskilling initiatives? Of course, we got our favorite online courses and e-learning platforms. Next favorite, in-person workshops and seminars, on-the-job training and shadowing, self-directed learning with access to resources. I am, for me, I like online courses and e-learning platforms. But when I am training, depending on the role, I am an on-the-job trainer. I would
Yeah.
like for you to
Get in
uh,
person. Walk
see
me
me
through it.
do it so I can walk you through it
Yep.
and let you do. I'm gonna do it one time. Then I want to give you the opportunity. I want to sit next to you, not you watch me. And you have that hands-on experience of being able to get through whatever it is that I'm training you on. But let's see if we have any comments of preferences when it comes to training methods. Okay, we see on a job training and shadowing. and e-learning, and that's a good one, a combination of everything, because again, depending on the industry and the topic,
Mhm.
sometimes it's all necessary. You know how much I love my flexibility and my and able to be home, but
Exactly.
sometimes at the beginning, and we did have a talk to me Tuesday, I think last year, about this, or, orientation and onboarding are not the same, and that onboarding process is where this takes place, and you have to have some of that in person, hands on walk through, so that you have the basics to do the e-learning and the online courses as you get further into your role or further into your position. But that's
Right.
just my perspective. What about yours?
I've actually had experiences with all four of those options, but I feel like I am. It's well, it depends. So some of the organizations that I've worked with, they've been smaller.
Hmm.
So it's been better to do, smaller group trainings or on the job training when it comes to helping them acclimate to their role or even helping them, learn a new skill set or if they've been placed on a new project, whatever the case may be. So it's been better off having them in like small group sessions and hosting trainings that way.
Hmm.
For larger organizations like for Google and Facebook, it was always, an autonomous culture. So you had the time to complete your time on your time during work hours. And then also you had the time to also do more advancement learning and development on your own time. So it was more that online platform, the e-learning courses, that sort of thing. So I like both. It just really depends on what it is.
Hmm.
I guess that they're going to be learning because sometimes it can just be handled through an online platform. Sometimes, like you said, it has to be in person. It has to be on the job, face to face with someone, more hands on. So
I agree. And they have gotten so well with the how animated, and it's like watching commercials on TV, like the
yes,
platforms and e-learn, they're interactive. They have the breakout sessions in them. And I think that that brings more of a more culture into the e-learning experience, doing the small e-learning. I participated in some where it's maybe four or five of us in this e-learning platform as a group,
that's
and
true.
they're doing the breakouts, they're doing the multiple choice questions. Even though it's an online platform, they have put so much into the platform to where you still get that one on
Engagement.
engagement versus I'm just
Yeah.
sitting here and I have to watch the entire video. I can't skip through it before I answer these questions. Because you'll lose me with that one. That one is not for me at all. If it's one of those, my
Yeah.
phone is probably very close to me. And and you're not learning. So I'm not upskilling myself. I'm not reskilling because the lack of engagement is there.
Yeah.
And
You're
I
just
think
checking a box at
right.
that point.
Checking a box to say I did it or whatever. And I think that's one of the issues with companies utilizing too many platforms, to where sometimes the employee is not this, especially if the platform isn't user friendly, mobile friendly. A lot of people do
That's
a
a good
lot from their phones versus a laptop or a computer is always in front of them. And
yep.
when you don't have you haven't acknowledged or identified the capabilities that the platforms you're bringing on board should have for your staff, you're losing them anyway, and ultimately, wasting the money. But let's dive into
Absolutely.
our last poll question. I think we have one more left. Long-term impact of development programs. In your opinion, how does participation in upskilling and reskilling programs impact an employee's career trajectory? Significantly increases career progression and opportunities, moderately improves job security and advancement prospects, has little to no impact on career growth, or can potentially make an employee overqualified and
Oh, that's
lead.
interesting. I never thought about it that way.
So
You're
let's see.
upselling yourself out of your job. You can't
Right.
even you're overqualified now. That's
That one is
hilarious.
so funny to me. Personally, I think that one is hilarious. But let's see if we get any comments. But Shatrice, I'll let you dive in this one first.
So, in my opinion, I'm always because I'm thinking with my HR hat on, I guess you can say, or even personally, because I feel like I've always invested time into continuous education and learning where I can. So I would go with number one, personally, significantly helps advance not only your employees, but also your organization. Not the boring trainings and stuff where you're just checking off a box because you say you want to get it done, but something that really resonates with your culture or resonates with your employee population.
Right.
Um, really help them. Like if you've really taken the time to assess your team and figure out, where that skills gap is, and you invest the time in giving them those opportunities to fill it, then I
Hmm.
feel like absolutely it will advance not only that person, that individual, but your entire company, your entire organization. It can only have a positive impact. Um,
Right.
Now, not trying to say you're going to upskill them enough to work them out of a job, like you're, training somebody how to be a software engineer. Now they can go, a project
Mhm.
manager to be a software engineer. Now they can leave you and go to a higher tech company or something like that. But just depending on your needs within your organization, you really have to take a close look at that and invest the time.
I agree. And and to touch a little bit on where you were going with that is, I think in the strategic thought process of upskilling and reskilling and addressing the gap that some companies don't address because of that right there. I'm going to train them and they're going to leave. I'm going to provide them with so much additional
Selfish.
knowledge to where they can shop themselves somewhere else. So I just want them to do what they're doing and be good at what they're doing. I don't want to expose them to anything else. And that's very unfortunate,
It is.
because if you're managing your culture, if you're managing um
Mhm.
from an HR perspective, what that pool of applicants look like, who do I have here, these roles, how long have they been here? Nobody wants to be anywhere for forever. I want to grow.
Yeah.
And at some point, okay, employee A has been promoted 3 times. This is the highest that they can go in their department. I'm not going to stop continuous education or upskilling you because I don't expect you to just decide to cap out. I expect you to have that hard conversation with me one day because you found somewhere else that you have more room to grow. But all companies are not like that, and they will put limitations on what they're willing to do or expose their staff to
I agree.
out of fear of losing a key employee or a highly qualified person. And then you do have those that just have sat in multiple places, wore multiple hats, and you've made yourself out qualified, overqualified for roles that are seem so simple because it is just one thing versus you have 10 tasks. So I don't want to employ you. You're going to cost me too much money. You have too much of a skill set. You're not going to stay here because this is below, what I believe you would be asking for if you knew how to do all those things. So I'm going to try to find somebody that may be a little more entry level, doesn't have all these skill sets just yet, and they can kind of tick up the ladder here versus you're coming in top, so you're not going to stay. Even though you don't know if that's how the person's going to think, unfortunately, sometimes when you provide too much information about what you have accomplished or how you've upskilled or been able to reskill, it can be a hindrance.
Yeah,
Which is unfortunate, but
it
that is
is.
life when it comes to that. So I think leadership has a role to play here overall. As an individual, you know where you want to go in your career or in your organization, and you have your role to play. But as a company, when you think strategically on the culture and your staff and the effectiveness, I want you to be as educated as possible or refreshed as possible in your role so that our probability has greater success. And if that is the mindset, then I feel like both parties win as long as both parties are willing to grow when it comes to that. But what are your thoughts when it comes to the roles and the responsibility of leadership and employers when it comes to just upskilling?
I think that leadership, there's probably a lack of awareness across some of these companies too. Maybe they don't feel like there is an issue. So if you don't know, how can you fix it? So I
Right.
think it's really dialing in and understanding, like, oh, are you having a lot of turnover? Do you have high turnover rates? Well, what's the issue? Why are people leaving? Oh, it's because they don't have further development opportunities. Well, that's a perfect opportunity to then dive a little deeper into that and say, well, what can we do to keep this from happening with our talent that we already have?
Right.
And then taking a look at, the roles that you're currently recruiting for. how long have they been open? Are you having a hard time filling those roles because of whatever reasons? Well, let's take a look internally. Who's already doing something similar or who has transferable skills to where
Mhm.
all we have to do is train them on this new software, or we have to help them, bring together a team, whatever the case may be. You have to get kind of creative and say, we could probably get, upskill this person because they're really strong in this area. They have, stellar performance. They've been with us an X amount of years and they've been kind of in this position for a while. Maybe they would like to do something new. So you have to think creatively too, from a leadership standpoint, and really figure out what it is, what your goals are, and if your goals align with what, the skill set gap, what you're trying to fill between you.
Mhm. I agree. And I think leadership has to address, their strengths and weaknesses in the area, as well as their just hard truths. I want to upskill and reskill in the workplace, but with, inflation being the way it is, what we've experienced over the last 5 years, and seeing the demands of employees and the staff members as far as flexibility
Mm-hmm.
and salaries, and then employers, I feel like, are in a very defensive space when it comes to employment right now, because of what happened when it came to the whole remote working and people not wanting to come back in the office. And I think instead of investing, they're using the skill gap as a way to downsize and cut. I'm not going to invest anymore into you because I can post this job as a contract position,
Mm,
pay less, don't worry about benefits, health insurance, any of those things. Eliminate this overhead position that I've been paying however much out, and narrow this down to a project based scenario and pay for what I want, get the service and move on. And then I'm changing what my bottom line looks like from a revenue perspective and a overhead expense perspective. I do see, unfortunately, business are experiencing inflation just as well as consumers, and that has been many. I've been in many of these conversations, from an HR strategic perspective, is what can we do to cut? Upskilling and reskilling is top of the list. Why am I paying for that? No, let's not pay for that. Let's find someone specific that can do that for 6 months, get it done, and then let's move on to whatever the next project in that
yeah.
department is. So I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was going to say that's the interesting take on that. And I see where you're coming from, especially with all these different layoffs, these mass layoffs that so many organizations are going through. And I wonder, like, what do leadership ever question themselves and say, okay, if we're just going to contract this position out for a lower wage, do we just, instead of letting someone go completely, do we approach them with this other opportunity and say, hey, we are downsizing this department. It's similar to something you were doing, but we only have this on a contract basis for X amount of dollars. Would you be interested? It beats being unemployed. So
It
I
does.
would, take it into
Yeah.
consideration. That's a really good point, though. That's a
It
really
beats being unemployed any
good.
any day. But then it's also
Yeah.
did a lot of during COVID, knowing your worth during quiet
That's
quitting. I'm
true
not
too.
staying here and
Yeah.
being overworked for less money. And again, that's why I say I think employers are in a very defensive position right now, because I'll go overseas. I'll get it done
That's
for half
true
of
too.
what I was paying you. Which is
Hmm.
which just sucks for where we are when it comes to the unfilling of positions, and
Yeah.
then,
So many people looking for jobs.
so many people looking for jobs, salary levels dropping significantly in particular roles. Because again, that's my perspective. We can definitely dive into that one on another Talk to Me Tuesday. But I just think employers are in a and on the defense, and there's nothing wrong with playing defense. But you have to know what you lose sometimes with that, and sometimes it is that qualified candidate that you've had for years that you're trying to, overwork them for less, and they understand what they're worth, and they don't want to tolerate that. Or you're not upskilling your staff, and you're creating gaps that create further confusion or miscommunication in departments, and things like that, which lead to higher turnover, or people just not being engaged, and just, I'm doing what I need to do because I need to get paid on the
Yeah,
first 15th, but this isn't really for me anymore because I don't feel like my company is invested in me or my department. I'm just a worker bee here. And as long as they're getting their reports, they're good. So I think that that wraps us up with our last talking point. I appreciate everyone for joining us today. I hope that it
yeah,
was um, engaging and knowledgeable for you, and you're able to take at least one thing from our talk today, and apply it to yourself and or hold your company accountable.
absolutely. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for joining. See you next month.
Bye.
Bye bye.